In 1995, a hiker goes missing in the mountains of Oregon. Soon rumors spread among the locals, who start saying that the man has been infected with an animal-borne virus called Hill's fever. However, the indigenous people call it face of the wolf. One day Grady and his son Blake go hunting in the forest. Blake keeps getting distracted by things like the mushrooms and the birds, so Grady scolds him and reminds him paying attention is important to survive. At that moment Blake notices something nearby and Grady confirms it's a deer. As he turns around Grady gets ready to shoot it, but the deer runs away. When Grady turns again, he can't find his son. Meanwhile Blake has found a good spot to wait for the deer, but instead he sees a mysterious creature that just disappears after a few seconds. When Blake tries finding it again, he hears some growling. Terrified, Blake begins walking backward as he hears the growling getting louder. Suddenly Blake is startled by a figure, but it's Grady scolding him for not following orders. More rustling can be heard among the trees and Grady senses danger, so he and Blake rush to hide in the hunting blind. Grady gets his gun ready to shoot because a mysterious creature is climbing up the ladder to reach them. It tries to break down the door and fails, so it moves around the blind to try to get them from the back. At that moment an animal appears nearby, so the creature jumps down to attack it. When Grady takes a peek, he discovers a mauled deer on the ground. He also notices the creature nearby and tries shooting it, but it immediately runs away and its howling can be heard in the forest. Blake asks what that was and Grady calls it a bear. That night Grady calls his friend Dan to tell him he saw the wolf. It's revealed he's been taking notes and has been researching this mysterious beast for a while. Dan doesn't see the point of chasing after it, but Grady insists it's to protect their kids. Blake overhears this while looking at his dad's tattoo. 30 years later, Blake has married Charlotte and they have a daughter called Ginger. One evening Blake receives an important letter that includes some keys. It turns out his father has officially been declared dead by the state of Oregon after being missing for years. Blake had expected this to happen sooner or later, but he's still in shock. He wishes he had spent more time with his father, revealing he left as soon as he was old enough. The next day Blake visits Charlotte at work and tells her he feels they've been distant lately, and getting that letter has made him want to spend more time with his loved ones. Since he needs to travel to Oregon to pick up all of Grady's things, Blake announces the family can spend the whole summer there. Later on the way to Oregon, Blake stops the truck when he sees 2 roads ahead. He tries checking the map on his phone, but they have no service around here. At that moment Ginger sees a man in the hunting blind and tells her parents as the armed guy comes closer. It turns out this is Derek, Dan's son and Blake's childhood friend. Derek explains that not many people live around here anymore and that the usual road to Grady's old farm is cut off, but he volunteers to guide them there and gets in the car. In the evening the trip is interrupted when the mysterious creature suddenly appears in the middle of the road, confirming he's a wolf. Blake immediately turns the car to dodge him, but it ends up crashing right into a ditch and getting stuck on a tree. Thankfully Blake recovers consciousness quickly and checks on his family, who are fine. Derek wants to escape and opens the door, only to fall to the ground because the truck is on its side. Blake tells his family to carefully climb out through the window, but at that moment they hear some growling. They see the wolf approaching in the rearview mirror and Blake immediately reaches for the door to close it while watching a wounded Derek groan on the ground. Suddenly the window is smashed by the wolf and the broken glass hurts Blake. Then the wolf jumps on Derek and finishes killing him before dragging the body away. Blake and his family use the chance to jump off the truck and go looking for Grady's house. When they finally see it, the wolf appears behind them and begins chasing them. The family runs as fast as they can and manages to finally reach the building. They rush inside and close the door, causing the wolf to start pounding on it while Blake holds it close. After a few minutes of non-stop pounding, the creature gives up and leaves. Afterward Blake grabs a flashlight and goes into the basement to turn on the generator. Now the house and the farm buildings can have light. Ginger wants to go home, but Blake explains it's dangerous during the night so they'll have to wait until morning. He also apologizes for not protecting her and they share a bonding moment. Charlotte wonders what kind of thing was on the road and Blake says he saw an animal standing on 2 feet like a person. Then Blake pushes a cupboard against the door to keep it blocked before grabbing his father's old radio to try to get help, but nobody responds. At that moment he notices a strange smell and follows it into another room, where he's surprised to find lots of meat and jerky. He gives it a try only for his jaw to start hurting, so he assumes he hit his face on the wheel during the crash. Suddenly one of his teeth breaks and falls out of his mouth, so a worried Charlotte forces Blake to sit to check his injuries. There's a deep cut on his arm and she proceeds to clean it while Blake theorizes he must have been injured by the broken window. However, Charlotte says it doesn't look like a glass cut. She bandages the arm before going to the radio to keep trying. Sometime later Blake begins nailing some wood on the floor in front of the cupboard at the door for extra safety, but his hands are trembling and he can't hold the hammer very well, so he ends up hitting his fingers. Sweating like crazy, he goes to the kitchen to get some water and hears thumping in the distance. With the hammer in hand, he follows the noise upstairs, noticing it comes from a particular room. Blake carefully steps inside and discovers the noise is coming from inside the wardrobe. When he opens it, he's confused to see the noise has been coming from a spider. Suddenly Blake starts feeling dizzy and has trouble breathing. It lasts for a few seconds and when he finally feels okay again, he goes downstairs to check on his family. Charlotte and Ginger are fine on the couch, But Blake can hear footsteps approaching, not to mention more growling noises. He slowly moves toward the window and starts sniffing the air while someone passes by outside. Charlotte notices her husband's behavior and finds it strange. When Blake moves to the door, the wolf reaches in through the pet door and grabs him by the leg to try to drag him out. However, Charlotte grabs the hammer and hits the wolf's arm to force him to let go. Blake screams in severe pain before passing out. Sometime later, Blake wakes up on the couch and tries looking for his family, but he only hears a strange distorted noise. He follows it into the basement, where he finds Ginger sleeping while Charlotte is still trying to get help on the radio. When she fails again, she throws the microphone in frustration. At that moment, she hears Blake wheezing and turns around to see him standing in the darkness. Blake tries to speak as he moves toward her, but only mumbling sounds come out of his mouth. While Charlotte explains that she's worried about him but she doesn't know what to do, Blake starts wetting his pants and she has to take him upstairs. As he lies down, Blake discovers that his hair is falling off. Charlotte brings a pen and paper to see if he can communicate by writing. Blake grabs the pen and has trouble writing, but after some effort he manages to spell dying. Charlotte assures him that he's just sick and he'll get better soon. While she continues to share words of love and affection, Blake just stares because he can't actually hear her, and his vision has become distorted with a slight blue tone. He tries telling her what's happening to him, but Charlotte can't understand him either. When Blake tries talking to his daughter, he notices there's blood on his hand. After telling Ginger to wait in the other room, Charlotte rolls up Blake's sleeves and removes the bandage to discover his arm is in a terrible condition. A hissing Blake freaks out and runs from his wife to start scratching his arm hysterically against the wall. To Charlotte's horror, Blake then starts eating the wound, and the more he chews the more teeth fall off. He stops all of a sudden and looks at a terrified Charlotte for a few seconds before walking away. Charlotte follows him, but since they can't communicate, she leaves him alone. Afterward, Charlotte looks out the window and notices Grady's old car outside, so she rushes to the basement to find the keys and a battery, followed by a knife from the kitchen. She drags her family to the car and has to help Blake get into the back seat because he can barely move. While she helps Ginger too, they hear a howl echoing in the area again. Charlotte rushes to the hood to connect the battery to the engine and Ginger watches Blake, who has begun to transform into a wolf. Then Charlotte moves to the driver's seat and tries to get the car going. At first the car doesn't respond, but after a few tries it finally starts. Charlotte disconnects the battery before going back to the wheel, but when they're about to leave, the wolf appears on the car hood. It smashes the window and breaks the gear level, so Charlotte starts attacking it with the knife. It distracts the beast long enough for the family to leave the car and run away. The wolf is coming after them, but they manage to climb to the top of the greenhouse and Blake removes the ladder so the beast can't follow them. Refusing to give up, the wolf enters the greenhouse and simply waits. Soon the tent can't hold the weight of 3 people anymore and the pins start coming off. At the same time, the wolf begins to jump to slash the ceiling, creating many holes. A terrified Ginger tries to move toward her mother, only to fall into a hole. Her parents grab her just in time and manage to pull her out right before the wolf can hurt her. Blake uses some growling and points at the house to tell his family to go back, then he jumps off the greenhouse and starts running into the forest. Since the wolf goes after him, Charlotte and Ginger rush back inside. Hearing all the growling and the howling, Ginger yells at her mother for abandoning her father and Charlotte has to explain Blake was trying to protect her. At that moment they hear growling outside, so Charlotte looks out the window to confirm it's Blake before opening the door. He comes inside and lies down on the living room floor as his body continues to transform into something monstrous. Ginger comes closer and at first she's startled by his snarling, but she tries again and gently touches his forehead. She tells him she loves him, however Blake can't understand her. His vision has become even more blue and distorted. Suddenly Blake bends over and starts throwing up lots of blood while his nails fall from his fingers. Ginger screams in horror and Charlotte drags her away while Blake is shocked to find a human finger in his puke. Then he snarls and jumps over the table to reach his family, growling at Charlotte who refuses to flinch. Looking at his wife right in the eye allows Blake to calm down and he tries to leave the house, but as soon as he opens the door he's tackled down by the wolf. As they struggle on the ground, the beast bites Blake and starts beating him up. After a few hits, the wolf begins throwing Blake against the walls and furniture. Charlotte runs in to stab the creature in the back with a knife, causing him to start chasing after her and Ginger. He reveals he's missing a finger, explaining the one Blake spat earlier. While Charlotte hides her daughter in another room, Blake blocks the wolf's way to start fighting him again. There's more biting and punching until Blake is knocked out. Then the wolf starts dragging Blake's body through the corridor, so Charlotte grabs a fire poker to hit him on the back and distract him away from the room with Ginger. She manages to hit him in the face too, but the wolf dodges her third attempt. Suddenly Blake tackles the beast and pins him on the floor to bite his neck, making sure to go deep enough to finally kill him. Now it's finally over, Blake takes a better look at this creature and notices the tattoo on his arm. It turns out this is his father Grady, who became a werewolf when he went missing years ago and has now passed the curse to his son. Overwhelmed by pain and difficult emotions, Blake runs outside and falls as his transformation comes to an end. His nails become claws, his body grows extra hair, and his teeth are now fangs. His vision finally settles and he realizes all the noises he's been hearing come from his improved senses. Now fully a werewolf, Blake lets out a mighty howl. In the house, Charlotte is comforting Ginger when suddenly the power goes out. She looks through the window and is shocked to see her husband fully transformed before he rushes into the house. Charlotte grabs the knife just in case and follows the noises, only to turn around and find Blake behind Ginger. When he tries to get closer, Charlotte slashes his arm so he takes the knife from her. Then the duo quickly leaves the house to hide inside the barn. Moments later, Blake appears at the door, breaking the wood and digging under it to get inside too. Because he can see in the dark, he manages to get close to his family without them noticing. However, when he takes another step, his foot gets caught in a bear trap that Charlotte has set up. Mother and daughter scream as they turn on a flashlight to run away and Blake tries to follow them, only to discover the trap is keeping him chained. Seeing no other solution, the foot is cut off. Blake then chases his family into the forest, where they find Derek's arm and the truck still stuck in a tree. Charlotte grabs Derek's gun before she and Ginger run again to hide in the hunting blind. Soon Blake is climbing the ladder and looking at his family, talking to them with low growls. Ginger realizes her dad wants this to be over, so when he tries to step in, Charlotte is startled and fires the gun. Ginger and Charlotte leave the blind to watch Blake die and cry for him together. In the morning, mother and daughter watch the beautiful valley that Blake loved as a child. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.